Society told me to do this, so I'm just going to do this. There's something inside of me that's just it's not aligned.
Hey guys, Jenica here from Multispective, and I'm here to share with you a new episode where I interviewed Nikki Nicholas. She decided one day to leave her marriage and leave her job and leave her entire life behind, hit the restart button on her life, and she decided to study Neuro-Linguistics Programming and do some deep meditation and deep introspection.
For that year and a half, I was either meditating like at my place through walking or whatever. That got me very, very well versed in understanding how to process out emotion.
And she's on air with us to share everything that she has learned over the years of self-reflection and self-studying. She talks about ways that we can unlock our full potential, ways that we can unlock our minds, and ways that we can achieve the absolute best sort of versions of ourselves. It is an episode that is packed with such great information and so many wonderful messages for you. So listen in, do let us know what you think, drop a comment below, and can't wait to hear from you all. So, I have heard a little bit about your story. I'm super excited to share this. It's interesting because yours is more like you've taken a proactive sort of decision in your adult life and decided to sort of like change the course of your future. And I think this can be really, really useful for anyone that's listening that's feeling stuck in their lives as an adult, feeling like they're maybe close to burnout, or they're feeling like they're kind of losing themselves in the sort of world that we live in today. So for those of you listening that might be feeling this way, here's a story, a true testament of someone who actually took that and turned it around. So the floor is yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. So essentially, I'm a life transformation coach and a mental and emotional wellness expert. So I actually specifically work on people who have gone through or are going through or about to go through what I went through, because like experiential understanding is far superior to just learning about something in a book. But essentially, I've been studying the subconscious mind since 2007, which is kind of what gave me the knowledge to do what I ended up doing, as what I'm about to say transpired. So essentially, I guess so. Right out of high school, I was 16. I ended up dating my high school sweetheart. We got married. We were together for 15 years, had an amazing time, amazing life, but things happened that were very challenging. We bought a house, the market crashed, whole bunch of different stuff. It was very, very hard. And I was at a corporate job, despite knowing deep down that I did not want a corporate job. I wanted to do entrepreneurial things. I'd always been like, since I was 4 years old, my parents told me that I would buy like a pack of wine gums or something, and I would open it up and I would sell for like 4 cents each. I would sell the candy so that I could buy more. And so very entrepreneurial. I used to like sell pop at truck stops and stuff, like sitting there,
Wow.
like the lemonade stand. And so basically, I always knew that I was entrepreneurial. I really loved everything to do with that. But basically, society told me, you need to go for money. What you want to do isn't possible. Just go get a good job that pays well, and just, go buy a house, go do all these things that you're told to do in society. And so I did them, and always in the background of my mind, more like always in the background of my emotions, I always felt this feeling of, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I do love my life. Like I do genuinely love my life. And I love my partner so much. We had amazing experiences, but I was always drawn towards other things like the entrepreneurial side of things. And so I spent all of my time at this 9-to-5 corporate job, and I was just like putting in the time. And then outside of work, I would do as much as I possibly could to build things entrepreneurially. And so that's what lit me up. And so at work, I would also listen to audiobooks, podcasts, everything I could about business, psychology, understanding the mind, understanding interpersonal communication. It was just fascinating to me. And then one day I listened to an audiobook by Tony Robbins, and he mentioned NLP. And I was like, ooh, this is really cool, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it's all about the study of the subconscious mind. So this was in 2007. And suddenly I was just hooked. I was obsessed. I'm like, I need to know more about this stuff. And so I studied and studied and studied and studied and studied. And as I did, I started basically doing more business type stuff outside of work. And also my partner and I, we ended up doing a music promotion company throughout North America. I modeled in China. So I did all these things outside of work, but I still had my 9 to 5 job. So everything outside of work was amazing. But I had my 9 to 5 job that I was just like clocking in, clocking out. It was fun. It was good. It was, whatever. But a big part of me just felt so unfulfilled. And I was like, why am I in this still? And every single day I was in that job for 12 years, like up, got promotions and stuff as time went on. But the entire time I just couldn't shake. I'm like, this is not what I am meant to be doing. And then I bought a house, the market crashed, and it was 45 minutes out of the town that I then had to commute to. So I was heavily in burnout mode and like commuting. I think I had half an hour to myself every single day. And the rest of the time I was just working on my external things because that's what lit me up. But also because in my mind, I'm like, okay, I taught myself how to build websites as well on the side. So I'm like, if I just build another website, if I just do more, if I just make more money with this, then I'll be happy. Then I'll get to the end of the road, the horizon, and happiness will be there. And because I can get enough money to quit my 9 to 5 job, blah, 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 blah. It always comes down to money, right? And so I found that I was just making my decisions in life purely based on security, on comfort. And like my husband and I, we even got an opportunity to potentially go manage some bands down in California. But we're like, well, they don't have that much, that many shows. We would not make enough to survive. So that wouldn't work. So all these things. And so we would go on music promotion trips. So on the weekends, we would drive 20 hours to like, somewhere in the States or somewhere in Canada for the weekend and then drive back and do this music promotion. And so every single week, I was just looking so forward to the weekend and working my butt off every day to the fullest that I could to eventually leave my job. But at the end of every weekend, I always had to come back. And I just remember coming back and always having this pit of my stomach heaviness. And I'm like, this is not what I want. I felt like a slave. And I feel like so many people out there feel like they're stuck, feel like slaves. And at that point, I went through a depression. I was having panic attacks. I was not good. I was living for the weekend. I was living for anything to get me out of the rut that I felt like I was in because I felt like I couldn't leave this hole of my life because I wasn't living where I wanted. I wasn't doing what I wanted most of the time. But when I could do what I wanted, it was very fleeting. And so anyway, years later, this was 2017, time just kept ticking. It kept ticking and ticking and ticking. And I felt that in me. And I'm like, it hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. I don't feel any different. I still feel like I'm living a life that I shouldn't be, even though I should want it. Yeah. There was just something there. And again, like it was like a perfect life. And I loved, what I loved about it, but there was just something that wasn't there. It wasn't fulfilling. Something was missing. And so I took my first in-person Neuro-Linguistic Programming course, and in it, our instructor actually put us all under trance as we were in class in order to teach us how to do hypnotherapy and Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And it was the most life-changing experience that I've ever had because I don't know if you've ever had subconscious mind work done on you, but you kind of come out of the session, and this was like, an extended period of time where it was happening. You come out of a session and you're like, holy crap, something changed. I don't consciously know what it was, but I know that my life's going to change. Yeah. And so that's what I experienced, like to the point of like, I was just like, I left that and I was like, I need to change my life. I don't know what that means.
It was like as if your brain had been rewired a little bit. Like,
okay, absolutely.
There's something that's happening here. But I do want us to talk a little bit more about that burnout. You talked about the panic attacks. You talked about the, that feeling of discomfort inside, like at the pit of your belly. Can you tell me a little bit more about that sort of burnout? Were you at that point able to pinpoint exactly what it was that was making you feel burnt out? What does that look like, and what could that look like for other people that might be feeling this way?
Yeah, and so I'm glad you actually said this, like pointed this part out and want to dissect this part, is because this is so common, and with depression, especially with panic attacks, all that kind of stuff, anxiety. So So typically in depression, it is like this. So where I was at was bought a house, the market crashed. I was in a town way outside of where I needed to work. At the time I had a job there, but then I got promoted and needed to commute. And so I would wake up at 4 a.m. I wouldn't get home until sometimes 8:30 at night and have to go to bed at 9. And all day, every day, I was working at my 9 to 5. And then while commuting, I was working on my website. So pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. But pushing myself, because I was also a perfectionist. I'm keeping that in check these days. But yeah, so it was like, not only that, but like kind of on the relationship side of things too, because I was in this relationship when I was 16 and we had been together. It ended up being 15 years. It's like this part of me, like I loved him more than anything, like anything. And we were so good together. We were like the couple that everyone looks at going, you guys are the perfect couple. And we had so much fun together. But I didn't experience so much of my life because I was in a relationship since 16 years old. And so there was this part of me. So it's like every single area of my life. It's like, it's almost like I played it safe instead of, like you say, with the security of the job, the same thing. It's like, okay, well, society told me to do this, so I'm just going to do this. And sure, like it works, it pays the bills, and I feel comfortable, and I like what I do. But there's something inside of me that's just it's not aligned. It's not me. It's not authentic to what I want. I get one life, right? And so there's that ticking clock within you. But yeah, so essentially what it was is I had all these things. I was pushing to try to get past this point in my life of depression of what I didn't want. But no matter how hard I pushed, nothing was working. Nothing was actually transpiring from it. It took a long time until it did. And then when it did, it was bumpy. We rented at our house and moved, and that was a whole thing. But also the fact that I had so much fear in me, because I'm like, I love this person I'm with. We're perfect together. But I want to leave, but that doesn't make any sense. And what's outside of that? And internally within me, I'm like, well, why the hell why do I want to leave? Like, it makes no sense. And the same with the job, because I'm told that this is what you should want and blah, blah, blah. So why do I want to leave? Like, what's outside of that? And the fear and the uncertainty of it all, because it's like, I essentially am saying, I don't want the life that I have, and I don't know why. And just that internal battle the whole time. And that's where the panic attacks were coming from, because I had that conflict. And that's where all those crazy, intense, overwhelming negative emotions always come from within anyone. It's all, when you know about the subconscious mind, you can pinpoint specifically what it is at the root and remove those, through hypnosis or whatever. But yeah.
Is it possible though, for an individual that might be feeling this conflict, to not know what it is that they do want, but they know where they are and they know what they don't want? Like, I know I'm not happy in my current situation. I just don't know where I want to go from here.
It kind of brings up, so when I was out of high school, I remember being like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I remember being like a little stressed out about that. And then I went to a career counselor and did an exercise, and they said, oh, you scored really well on here. This is the kind of things that you would like to do. And I looked at it. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. But I'm like, I don't know which one. And how do I know? How do I know for sure? And so I would second guess myself. And I'm like, well, I don't want to spend my parents' money on things that I'm not sure about. So I'll just hold off. And then I didn't end up doing it. I ended up teaching myself everything I know. Well, and some courses through this kind of stuff, NLP and stuff. But it's like, now I actually create stuff to help people find their purpose and path in life. And one of the modules that I've created, it's essentially something to show people, here's what you should be doing. Here's what lights you up the most. Here's what jives with you. And it's funny because I did it on myself and it was the same type of stuff. So I knew back then, because everybody knows what they enjoy, but there's always some kind of either external force telling you can't or you shouldn't do it or it won't work, or there's an internal force, and usually those internal forces are reflections of previous external forces that have, been hovering in your life. And so you're regurgitating, echoing the same conversations that people have had with you where, oh, I could never do that. Oh, it'll never work. And so typically what it is, it's not that people don't know. It's that the part of them that does know, they're silencing it. They're shutting it off. They're trying not to hear it. And that is, in a nutshell, if I could condense that, everything I've just said, it's that I knew I had a little voice inside of me saying something and I was repressing it. I was trying not to hear it because it was an inconvenience. It would mean shifting my entire life. It would mean a lot of discomfort and going into fear and uncertainty and all the feelings. And so that's what that internal battle was. And that's where the panic attacks came from, is that I knew deep down the answers, but I wasn't taking action on them because I had so much fear, so much uncertainty towards what it would mean for my life. So after that course, I knew I had to change my entire life and pretty much jumped off the deep end, did a complete 180. Ended my relationship, my 12-year job, ended up moving out of the house that I had a whole bunch of roommates and all my friends and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I was like, okay, I need to, essentially, I am having so many intense emotions, negative emotions coming up in me because like I had never been alone. That was the biggest thing for me. I had never been alone. And my husband was so good to me. And he was like my rock, I had never been alone in my life. And that honestly is why I knew that I had to be, is because I was so terrified that at maybe 80 years old, if he died, it would be the first time I would ever have been alone. And I don't know if I would have been able to handle it at 80 years old, you know? So knowing that I had such massive fear in me, fear of just that loneliness, that feeling of loneliness. And so all these negative emotions came up and I'm like, you know what? I just need to sit in this. I'm just going to act like a monk on a mountaintop and just meditate. I'm going to start meditating. And because I had just done a 10-day silent meditation retreat, where you meditate for 10 hours a day for 10 days. And that was intense and amazing.
Is this the Vipassana retreat by any chance?
Vipassana. It was such a good experience.
Tell us a little bit more about that. I feel like listeners would totally could learn so much from this experience as well and maybe try it out themselves.
So right from the get-go, I actually reached out to some people who needed a ride there. So I actually picked up a couple girls and I drove them to Vipassana. And so we got there and it's all these like-minded people. And so sexes are separated from each other. So I was just in with the girls. But they were just so much fun. It was like, imagine you go into a room with all your new BFFs and it's like, this is awesome. And then you only get a few hours like that. And then suddenly they're like, hey, you can't talk or look at each other anymore. It's like, damn, like I was having so much fun.
Exactly.
But that's what it is. And so I had a roommate. Some people didn't. I found it a little bit challenging with a roommate just purely because like, sometimes the window would be open. She had opened it and I'd be like, well, crap, I can't look at her. I can't indicate. I can't act as if she is existing. So how do I don't want to close the window on her. So like little things like that.
Yeah.
But I learned so much about myself because just like being around people, and basically you have to pretend that you are in solitude. You have to pretend that nobody is there and you are just purely by yourself. And so you can't look each other in the eye. You can't acknowledge each other. You can't anything. Like you can't anything. And so that was a little weird. It was strange. But everyone's doing it. So whatever. You just get used to it. Also, you're not even allowed to bring like anything to distract yourself. You can't bring a journal to write down your experience. You can't bring pen and paper. You can't bring outside food. They had really good like vegan food. I really enjoyed it. But even eating, everybody when they eat has to just stare at a wall and they have a bench space. So you can't even you can't even look at it's weird. It's almost like being in prison or something. But again, you get used to it. So there's allotted times where you have to meditate in the hall with all the other people. And then the instructor will say things and she'll check in with you and everyone else and see if you need anything, how you're doing. Are you able to silence your mind? Are you having trouble with any of it? And then at other times, you can walk and you can move around the facility. You can go outside and walk and meditate. And then at other times, you have the option of meditating in your room or in the hall. And so you're meditating for, 10 plus hours, 10 hours a day. And then there's food in between, and just restrictions on what you can have and bring and all that kind of stuff. But it was a really, really powerful experience. So do you know much about brainwaves, like how the different brainwaves affect like the alpha or theta, or like what brainwave state you're in?
A little bit. I think that it does change as you're getting deeper into the meditation.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So when you get into theta, so alpha is like relaxed. And then when you get into theta, you're almost like in that dream state. So like you're kind of hovering in that dream state. So you'll notice that if you do Vipassana, as the days go on, you get deeper and deeper, quicker and quicker. So like near the end, the last couple of days, like, holy crap, when you're meditating, like crazy, like for me, dreams from the last like years of my life were flying across my awareness, because dreams are just your subconscious mind speaking to you. And as you're tapping into different subconscious sensations within your body, which is part of Vipassana, they are correlated with the different like metaphorical representations from your subconscious mind. And so you'll have crazy dreams, like insane dreams.
Now, is it possible for someone who's experienced a lot of trauma or repressed trauma for these things to come back up?
Yeah, so that's actually another thing. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is important for people to know, is that I think it's like a third of people don't make it to the end. And that was how my experience was as well, is you see people drop off, or in the hall, people will just break out in tears because they've tapped into something at like a trauma. They've tapped into something at a subconscious level. And so actually, speaking of that, in that meditative time that I had, actually, I'm going to go into that. But when I was going into all these emotions, I was going into all this stuff, and holy crap, did a lot of like tears come up. And sometimes I didn't even know why I was crying, but you're just releasing because you're tapping into something that's very, very, very deep at a subconscious level, and you're just processing it out and allowing it to flow. And so, and even in Vipassana, same thing, like, emotions came up, and it was just, you kind of come to expect that, and everyone kind of talks about it at the end, because it is a very transformative experience, in not just in the experience of like how crazy it is to put yourself into that kind of experience, but also that like you are doing inner work, like massive inner work as you're going through it. So wow. It's very cool. This propelled me into that next phase, but I was also learning about, as I had studied the subconscious mind since 2007 up until at this point, it was 2019, and 2017 is when I started doing that inner work to deal with all those emotions of flipping my life around. So, but it was interesting because it was right around this time so I actually had a mentor friend who also was very good with the subconscious mind. And he was saying, he's like, have you ever tried acid? And I was like, no. And he's like, would you like to meditate with me? And I'll show you what you can do in meditation when you're more fully into your subconscious mind through like psychedelics. And I was like, okay. So we spent 10, 11 hours just laying down, meditating. And he showed me specific little things about how to tap into certain subconscious prompts inside of yourself. And so this is what I do with people while I help them get rid of the root of whatever trauma they're experiencing that's keeping them stuck in life, is the sensations in your body. And actually Vipassana goes into this, but they don't talk about that they're doing it because they want to kind of keep it vague and ambiguous so people don't start to think about it instead of the blank mind.
Right.
But so I started meditating like crazy, and then actually going into the next segment, then I left my job, and I was like, okay, well, now I have time for the first time in my life since being an adult. I didn't have a job, and I was like, this is amazing. But so I was like, hey, well, I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to find every single subconscious block within myself through what I know through these experiences. And so I did. And so funny enough, again, what I was saying about becoming like a monk on a mountaintop, I decided to self-isolate so that I could go into fear of judgment where people are like, what are you doing? So I went into all of these negative emotions. And one of the big things that I went into was that I wanted to start my business. But I was like, I understand it from a craving standpoint. When you think about like Eastern philosophy and stuff, I'm like, I can feel within me that I have desire, I have craving to become someone, to matter, because deep down, for some reason, I feel like I don't matter, or I won't matter if I don't do that. And so I was like, no matter how much I want to move forward with my business, I want to matter. The fact that I want to so bad tells me there's something there that I need to go into. And that's why I did that self-isolating. And so I was like, I'm becoming nothing and no one, like a monk on a mountaintop kind of thing. But it was funny because this was a month and a half-ish before COVID. And so then a month and a half goes by, and then suddenly everyone else had to self-isolate. I ended up spending a year and a half actually meditating for 10 plus hours a day. So so I really went internal. So it's funny, actually, I didn't even think about that. You're like, oh yeah, did it prompt you to meditate more? Like, yeah, I guess it did. Yeah, exactly. So like I went into everything, absolutely everything I could find. And I would put myself into discomfort, like situations, like, for example, have you ever walked through the mall and just felt feelings of like any kind of negative feelings? Like, I don't know, you're looking at billboards and it's like, oh, I'm not that. Or you're looking at clothes, or you're looking at people and you're feeling inadequate, you're feeling negative feelings about yourself, you're feeling, not good in some way. Yeah. So I would put myself into situations like that, and I would meditate while I would be walking through the mall. I would find those feelings and pinpoint them so that I could understand them and process them out using the techniques that I use. And so that is literally what I did for that year and a half. I was either meditating like at my place, or meditating like through walking or whatever. And it was just a focus all the time is, where do I feel a negative emotion? And then I would process it out. And that got me very, very well versed in understanding how to process out emotions. And I knew that was the point as I was going through it.
It's weird because it's like you're tapping into a very spiritual side, but also practically looking at it, like non-judgmentally, objectively, like, okay, that's interesting. And this is where I feel it in my body. So it's like you're taking out, in a sense, you're feeling the emotion while at the same time you're removing the emotion from the situation.
Exactly. Yeah. So you actually nailed that, because all it is, whenever you do any kind of inner work, all it is you are aligning your conscious mind with your subconscious mind. So you're aligning your conscious intention with whatever it was out of alignment with your subconscious mind. So like every single negative emotion we have is there to, it's literally, if you think about any negative emotion you have, you made that feeling in you. Some part of you, the subconscious part of you, put that feeling there. And the way that I like to describe it is like, if you think about a caveman back in the day, who had never, ever heard of a bear before, and then suddenly he gets attacked by a bear. Right. From that point onward, he has an association with that bear of that bear equals danger. And so whenever he sees a bear, he gets a feeling, and that feeling prompts a reaction in him to run to whatever. But we don't realize it typically as humans in our society, but everything we do, without exception, comes from some kind of a subconscious pattern like that. And it's always to keep us safe in some way. And so whenever somebody has something out of alignment subconsciously, they're going to present it as like a symptom to someone like me, to someone who they're talking to, and be like, hey, I have these negative feelings. I have these negative thoughts that won't stop. I have this event in my life that I can't move forward with, this thing, this passion that I can't move forward with because I have this emotion stopping me, or something inside of me stopping me, or I can't stop doing this because I don't know why. but there's a part of you that wants to do something and a part of you that won't allow it. And essentially all that is it's misaligned. So subconsciously, you have trained yourself subconsciously to bring up a negative emotion or just some kind of prompt, an internal prompt, a sensation typically. And maybe that served you or the person at one point. Actually, a good example I like to give is, say a little boy was tying his shoes and didn't know how to tie his shoes properly on the playground when he was 5, and he got made fun of. And in that moment, he's like, oh my God, like he felt horrible. And so he got this feeling of, it's dangerous to tie my shoes in front of people. And so then that's great for when he's little, because then he'll avoid doing that and he won't get made fun of. Yeah. But then he's 40 years old down the road and he hasn't looked at that subconscious pattern within him, and he hasn't corrected it. And so then he's still scared because he hasn't made that connection. He hasn't realigned the conscious and the subconscious mind. And that is so common, like with phobias or honestly anything in life where people just stop themselves or don't understand why they can't do the things that they want to do or keep doing the things they don't want to do. And honestly, meditation is the answer to that. 100%. We have so much power within our minds. We have no idea, because we are the ones doing whatever we're doing at one level or another to ourselves.
Right. So would you say at the core of NLP is meditation?
No. Well, I never thought about that. The creators of NLP, I would say no. The creators of NLP studied different psychiatrists and psychotherapists who were like world renowned. And so by studying what they did and then matching what they did to get the same kinds of results, that's how NLP was born. But at the same time, I feel like those people who they were studying, like those psychiatrists, one of them had polio, which is why he kind of like when you lose a sense, you get other senses that are more amplified. And that's what he said is like, he thinks or thought that his polio, it helped him to become more aware of certain things. So maybe at that level, I think you need that kind of awareness, because it is about, how is this prompting me? Why is this prompting me? That kind of thing. To be honest, like when you look at most modalities of healing in any way, whether even calling it healing is kind of woo woo, but it's like even scientifically or any kind of field of healing, it's all the same thing. Yeah. It's just looking at it from a different perspective. Right. And that's the really fascinating thing about coming from the scientific and analytical side and then going into the spiritual side after the fact, is because you see that overlap and you're like, hey, it's all just the same. Yeah. Like energy 100%. is just feelings essentially, or sensing certain things. And yeah.
So tell me a little bit more. So for you, it started off with meditations. Did you try any of the other modalities? And did you feel like you kind of like had to go through a bunch of different sort of modalities to find the one that clicked with you? Or do you feel like all of them were equally important to get you to where you were?
I would say NLP being the groundwork, being like the foundation, was pivotal, because it really gives you a great foundation in, hey, this is what you do every single day. This is how you think. This is how you process information without realizing it. And when you become aware of that, it's just so fascinating. Like even just thinking about, like, I use feelings. That's my primary method of how I go in to find the root of something. But like if you look at any memory, any of your external 5 senses, you also have those same internal 5 senses, and any memory can have those 5 senses tied to it. And so, for example, if you think about a memory from your past, if it's a positive memory and you start to pay attention to where in your inner vision do you see that? Is it far from you? Is it close to you? Is it bright? Is it dim? Like there's all these different, they're called submodalities in NLP. So that is how you code happy or sad or whatever kind of memory it happens to be. So right after Vipassana, right after I did that meditative acid session and I found what I needed to find. So this mentor, he taught me a meditative technique that I'll show you what it is. So when I was terrified to speak in public, including at this corporate job. I was scared to speak in meetings because anytime it came up that I'd have to speak, I didn't like speaking in public. I didn't like being seen and I felt inadequate, blah, 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 blah. So if someone said something, in my head, even if I knew the answer, I wouldn't say it. And then I'd beat myself up for not saying it. And like, there's this repetitive cycle over and over and over of like, I should say it. I'm not saying it, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I suck, you know? Yeah. And so I noticed that within myself. And this was after I learned about this technique. And so I was like, okay, I am going to use this technique to see if I can get rid of this feeling. So my feeling for me was in my solar plexus, and it was fear. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to just work on this fear. So for 2 days in meetings, in the background, not out loud, I would say to the feeling, so this is the technique, it's called Ho'oponopono. It's an old Hawaiian. And so this is a different way of using it than most know, but same thing. So I would focus on the sensation, and it's always important to focus on the first place you find it, the first place you feel it, like your heart. So you focus on it, and then you say 4 things to it. You say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. And then you keep saying those phrases to it, and then you see which phrase resonates the most with that sensation. And one will always resonate more than the others. And then you drop the other phrases, and you just say that one phrase to it. So for me, it was, I love you. And so in my meetings for 2 days, I'm like, I'm going to practice. So I would say to it in my mind, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I would notice it shift. I would notice the sensation would shift a little bit, because essentially what you're doing here is your typical response when you feel an emotion you don't like is to run from it internally. So that's why overthinking happens, is because you don't need to think about the thing a million times. You need to feel the thing, but you don't want to feel it. So you're bouncing, going into your thoughts. Oh, maybe I can figure out this external thing, but it's not about the external. It's about what you're feeling. It's the trauma from your childhood. And so you need to consciously put your attention on this sensation. And that's the realignment of you're essentially kind of scratching the record. So you have a neurosynaptic pathway that's tied to, so a memory that's tied to a trauma in your past. And this feeling within you is called a neurochemical response. So as soon as the trauma happens, neurosynaptic pathway is formed, or a memory, and then a neurochemical response is formed at the same time. So they're all linked. And so that's why I go in through feeling to find the root. Is using meditation. You can use techniques like this to focus on it and realign. So it's kind of like walking a trail. Instead of walking the same trail and you're kind of indenting that trail more and more and more and more and more, forging that path a little deeper, you're deciding to walk off the path. You're walking to the side of it, kind of thing. Is you're giving love and attention and acceptance to the feeling, instead of running from it, instead of avoiding it, instead of distracting yourself or not feeling it. Right. And you're not thinking negatively of the feeling either. You're thinking positively. That's the I love you and all that kind of stuff. And essentially that is if you think of hypnosis, a lot of hypnotherapists do regression therapy. And that's just essentially taking that trauma in a different form, which is through metaphor, through the subconscious mind, as opposed to the somatic, the sensation within you, the neurochemical response. And they'll take people back into their past and find that childhood version of them, give them love, tell them what they need to know, and that kind of thing. And so this is the exact same thing, but we're just doing it through a different form, I suppose, through the feeling. So if you do that, you could do that right now or later, focus on your heart and just say those 4 phrases, pick the one that resonates the most, and just keep saying it. And it will eventually dissipate. So mine did, that one in my solar plexus. And then from that point on, I had no fear in meetings. And I
That's
was like
so
an
interesting.
all-star. I was like
Yeah.
owning all the meetings, and then getting promotions, ended up doing project management after that. And so once you do this enough times, and this is what I did for that year and a half, meditating 10 more hours a day. This is what I was doing, is just going in and recalibrating and finding every single thing inside of myself, the loneliness, the judgment, the fear of missing out, the inadequacies, the I don't matter, I'm not enough, and just finding every single one, going into the weakest weaknesses that I could find within myself and basically giving them a hug. And that is the realignment. Not running from them, not avoiding them, but actually facing those and being like, that part of me is okay and I accept it. And through that acceptance, the feelings dissipate, and then you can just be, and you can just do what you need to and want to do in life, and not restrict yourself or obstruct yourself. So when you dive deep enough into yourself, into your inner world, when you're meditating, you start to realize it is just energy. It's all vibration. We are all vibration, which is energy. And so it's different, like, flavors of sensation. And so then you can start to pinpoint the sensation and just give your awareness to it. And just through awareness, you don't even have to do Ho'oponopono. I dropped that and then ended up just doing the awareness type technique. And essentially what I do now is I'll just feel into, like, the weakest weakness, like, what is the most discomfort? Like, if this goes wrong, then what's the worst that could happen? That's where the root is, because that's what you're avoiding, and that's what you're trying to compensate for through action in life. But if you're willing to feel that weakest weakness, and essentially all it is just feeling it. And that's what Vipassana is too, is that you scan your body, all the different sensations, and you're just giving your awareness neutrally to those sensations. And then people, like, burst out into tears because they're tapping into trauma, because when you silence your mind, all that stuff bubbles up. And it's free flowing, and it's like, and they don't typically know what to do with it, but all you really need to do is just give it love, or just give it attention, awareness, and love yourself. And that's really all it is, which is amazing, because, like, there's so much in this world, that, like, so many mental health challenges that people are having. And it's like, if they just knew they have the power in their own mind, and all it is about facing the stuff that is challenging. And people don't want to feel those negative feelings because, oh my God, it's so scary to feel. They don't realize it's the fear they're afraid of, not the feeling. The feeling is just a sensation once you actually get down to it. And when you're meditating, also, there are different parts of your brain that are turned off. So you don't even feel it in the same way. You're witnessing it like an outsider, like an observer, versus it being you. You are the witness and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, I'm not sure how long it took, but I was doing it for quite a while.
So last question, what are some practical steps and a message that you can leave away with our listeners today?
Oh, actually, I forgot to tell you, but I actually have a free gift that I would like to give. Actually, okay. There's two things. So one is a link to, I think it's a 9-minute video that I created on what subconscious blocks are, how they came to be, and how people can find them within them. So I'll leave a link to that. And then also I'm offering a free gift of 10% off coaching with me for 30 days after the podcast goes live. So that's, and then for what to do, like practical steps and stuff, I would say, honestly, do Ho'oponopono. Like, it's so simple. But it is so powerful. So powerful. And if people aren't really into meditating, actually one thing that could help them is even just, so meditation essentially is you either are focusing all of your attention on something or all of your attention on nothing. So a good practice that I like to say for people who are just starting is to just set their alarm, like, for 10 times a day randomly. And then as it goes off, you see it, turn it off, and then stop thinking for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is super simple. So this is for people who have never meditated and are like, I can't turn my head off. And it's like, okay, just stop for 10 seconds. If you can't do it, that's fine. You get 5 seconds through. But the key is that as you're 5 seconds through, you notice a thought. And the cool thing is when you notice your thoughts, start to pay attention. Where are they located? How are you hearing them? Is it your voice? Where is that voice? Like all the different little nuances, and you start to pay attention. It's like they say, clouds in the sky. Pay attention to all the little things, and you'll start to become mindful of how they come in and how they impact you. And when you have a thought, then start paying attention. What's that thought making you think? Or sorry, what's that thought making you feel? Where do you feel it in your body? Or was the feeling what prompted the thought? And then you start to become mindful and pay attention to that. So just little things like that, if people are, trying to get into it and feel like they can't, they definitely have little tiny steps they can take to get better and better at it.
Wow. Thank you so much for today. I really, really appreciate it. I feel like I learned so much from this.
So much fun. This is really, really nice. Really great conversation.
If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Chris Trzynski, Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.